Welcome to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere, Inc., a company based in Florida. Hosted by Michael John Sullivan, this is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Now, here is Michael John Sullivan.
Welcome to Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan, and thank you for joining us for another podcast. This particular podcast is sponsored by Magic Everywhere Incorporated, a company based in Kissimmee, Florida. You can see our books as well as all our merchandise at magiceverywhereinc.com. We'd like to welcome children's author Tina Marie Young. She's the author of the very fabulous The Mystery Puzzle Children's Book Series. Tina has 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren, and loves spending time reading to kids. Throughout her life, Tina has volunteered many hours supporting education and recreation to organizations that help promote educational success, family engagement in schools, and team sports and services to the community. These organizations include being a Girl Scout leader, the president of the PTA for her daughter's elementary school, the teen mom for soccer, t-ball, baseball, softball, roller hockey, ice hockey, cheerleading advisor, and these are just the ones she can remember. Tina has traveled to numerous countries and states throughout her life, which she feels has helped her realize all the beauty we possess and created a magical imagination in her mind, enabling her to write books that spread love, hope, understanding, empathy, and acceptance to children everywhere. When Tina is not writing, or taking care of numerous kids as well, she can be found close to the ocean, collecting sea glass and developing new characters for the Mystery Puzzle series to visit. Tina, welcome to Magical Books for Kids podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you've done a lot, obviously. You mentioned you have 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren as well. As a child, did you have any fun books that you love to read over and over again? Was there any particular books or authors that inspired you to become a children's author?
You know, I grew up with 3 sisters, and we were all very close in age. So we had an extensive library of books, magazines, comic books. But the books that stood out to me most was number 1, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang by Ian Fleming. That story was just so magical to the 4 of us, and we enjoyed reading it again and again. Some of the other books are Part-Time Dog. These are picture books, storybooks. Um, Part-Time Dog was written by Jane Thayer, and the other book was Be Nice to Spiders by Margaret Bloy. And those are 3 that stood out the most. But we had our own little filing system in our bookcases, and we each had a little library card. So reading was a big part of my growing up years.
Did your parents were involved with your reading process or your reading growth, or was that something that you did yourself?
You know, my mom did read a lot to us when we were younger. I think because we were all so close in age, we read a lot to each other. We lived in a military family, so we traveled a lot. So often we only had each other. So we made up a lot of games with the books we read, and we just had good fun with it.
You mentioned that you had sisters. Did that help you grow, or did it help you become closer to each other?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, traveling, we never lived anywhere longer than 4 years. So we really only had each other.
Was that difficult? Was that difficult that you only had like a 4-year stint in particular places? So that when you mentioned that you visited, traveled to many countries, I guess did you live in several countries or?
Yes, we did. We lived in Spain. We lived in Rota, which is actually on the southern tip of Spain. My mother was born and raised in England, so our whole family, her side of the family, lives there. So often we would travel all the way through Spain, half of France, hop a ferry over to England, and that's where we had a lot of adventures. So yes, it was a little difficult moving all the time, only because you had to make new friends and you were always the new kid. So, but it also allowed me to have these friendships that I've had since I was, 5 years old, that I still talk to these people. So, yeah, there's good and bad.
So as a young child, you certainly lived in many different cultures and everything. Did you pick up languages as well along the way, or?
It was easier when I was younger because I've been in the United States for a long time now. I lost a lot of it, but I can
Mhm.
get by with my Piquito language in Spanish. But yeah, it was fun, learning different languages and being around people, different cultures and their money. So it taught us a lot. It just opened our minds up to lots of possibility.
Right. So while you're traveling and everything, and you're moving from country to country and home to home, um, did you keep a journal, or did you write a diary, or how did you start writing?
Exactly. A
Yeah.
diary. I did. I had one of those, 7-year diaries where you could write a little paragraph each day. And it actually became a funny thing with my sisters because my youngest sister really wanted this diary, and I would keep it hidden in different places around the room. So whenever she wanted something from me, I'd say, "Okay, you can have my diary when I'm 16," and then I would sort of do this diary, diary, and so I got away with a lot with my writing tools.
Well, sure. And yeah, of course, she was your younger sister, so you had to put her in a place, right? In some ways.
Right.
Right. So, okay, so you've had obviously an incredible background for traveling and culture and countries like that. So you've had certainly um, during this particular time frame, what particular age did you end up staying in the States?
I think we came back in when I was actually just turning my teenage years.
Mhm.
We spent 4 years, the first tour when I was younger, and then we went back when I was around 10
Right.
and stayed till 13, almost 14. So it was a hard time to come back to the States for me. We lived a very sheltered life on a small little neighborhood.
Mhm.
Even though we did get to, travel outside of the base and see lots of the country, coming back to the United States was it was a big transition. So yeah, that was fun.
So the idea behind the mystery time series, the mystery puzzle series, excuse me, the book that I picked up was the mystery puzzles visits the stars. From what I read, is the puzzle is a magical puzzle. Is that we're right? And it's
Correct.
and it's filling pieces for this little boy, and I believe that you had mentioned you had a dedication to two boys. Are those two your sons, Ellison and Easton?
Actually, that is my grandson, and
Okay.
Ella is my granddaughter. So yes, all of my books are dedicated to them, but really they're dedicated to all kids. I just put a small passage in there for my grandkids.
Okay. And so, how did you come up with the idea? To me, it was very fascinating that it's one I haven't seen in all the books that I've read. Is that the little boy sees this puzzle and it starts to form, and he's trying to guess what the puzzle is, and he becomes very curious, which is great. I mean, that's a perfect way to get anybody curious, is to see a puzzle form before you, and you're seeing each piece, and you're trying to guess, what does this mean for me, that type of thing. And in this particular book, it was about seeing stars and things like that, but you have to buy the book, of course. But to me, that was very. How did you come up with that particular concept?
You know, it's to me the books have deep meaning. And it's for a child, they're not gonna see that part of the book, but in my mind, I felt that this magical puzzle was really just their subconscious, the child's subconscious mind, any child really, and their thoughts and what they're thinking. Only the puzzle is actually manifesting their thoughts. So, hence, it's magical because not many puzzles fly around and appear in your bedroom. But that was my thought, and I felt like this child, this particular child, Easton, in this story, he already knew the answer. He already knew what he needed to do. He just needed a little push to get him there, and that's what the puzzle represents in all the books.
Right. Now you mentioned Easton is your grandson,
My
correct? when he saw his name and he's the featured character in the book. What was his thoughts when Grandma tells him all about this?
You know what? I actually asked him first
Okay.
because I just learned my lesson with the first book. Don't just start grabbing things from your life, you know. And it's interesting when we talk about being a writer and where our ideas come from, and that is basically what it is, you know. It's the places we've been, the people we know, the things we've seen, and we sort of form our characters. I do anyway. Um, from that concept. So, you know, Easton in this particular character, I just used his name. You know, his real life ambition is not to be an astronaut, but this character is. So I like to try to explain that to kids, you know, when they ask me, well, who is Easton? Who is he? You know? And that's kind of the thing. He's a culmination of a lot of different things that have happened in my life as a writer.
Now, you mentioned that you have 4 books. Two have also been written as well. Would you like to go through each particular book, the actual short storyline of each particular book?
Sure. We'll start with the first one, which is the mystery puzzle visits the neighborhood. Now, this is about a little boy named Liam that has moved to a new neighborhood and is not fitting in as quickly as he'd like, not meeting as many friends, so he becomes sad and just a little lonely. So the puzzle does visit him and starts to show him some places to look and ideas that he might not have thought about, but he should maybe look into for, you know, a, a way to fit in to the neighborhood. So I'm going to read just one little excerpt from the book because each book does have a little message in it, and I try to boil it down to one sentence if I can in each book. So this is what I came up with. When Evan's mom came back in the room, Liam looked at her very confused. Why doesn't Evan talk to me or look at me? Liam asked. Some children have a hard time doing things that other children find easy, Evan's mother answered. So that kind of sums up what happened in that book. So
Right.
the lesson that he learned. The next book, The Mystery Puzzle Visits the Seashore, is about a little girl who spends every summer with her father. She doesn't live with her parents, they each live separately. So she's having a hard time because her dad has invited a guest that she hasn't met before and wasn't aware was coming to the last minute. So here's the excerpt. Her dad took Celeste's shovel and looked straight into her eyes. Being kind to people is how we make new friends. Once we make friends, we share our thoughts and learn new ideas that may help everyone, including ourselves. Celeste looked down at the sandcastle. So that was sort of the lesson that Celeste learned.
Hmm.
The next one is the mystery puzzle visits the stars, which is the one that you have. And we talked a little bit about that already. Easton knows he wants to be an astronaut when he grows up, but he's not quite sure he can do that. So here's the excerpt from this book. Yes, I really do, Easton exclaimed. Dad gave Easton a high five. You can be anything you want to be. You just need to study hard at school and remember to always follow your dream.
Yeah, that's a great message. That was the one line that stuck out to me when I was reading it as well. And as you mentioned, that's not the dream of your grandson, but it's a wonderful message to convey. So we are talking to Tina Marie Young. She is the children's author of the very popular The Mystery Puzzle series. She's been giving us some excerpts, one line from each book. So we're through 3. And what's the line that stands out to you as far as book 4?
In book 4, the mystery puzzle visits the lagoon. And this is actually one of my favorites because it speaks true to my sister and I, who are Irish twins, which means we were born less than a year apart. So
Wow.
we spent a lot of time together, which you had asked me that earlier. So
Mhm.
um, this is actually towards the end of the story. In the beginning, when Cassie went to look for the puzzle, it was gone, but she was quite happy and understood why the mystery puzzle had visited. It wanted her to have the confidence to try things that might seem frightening at first. That's the excerpt. And the final one.
And so you have also two more, right? And they're both ready to go, I guess. Do you know when they'll actually be available for the public?
Both of those stories should be out before the holidays. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, they need to take the next step with my illustrator who lives in Portugal, Luis Perez, by the way, who is absolutely fantastic illustrator, and actually helped create a lot of the series with me. So that's where
Yeah,
we're at.
yeah, the illustrations are beautiful and everything. Now, during the pandemic, I've had a chance to speak to many authors and everything. And I guess a lot of the authors used the time that they had to write. Some of them wrote quite a few books. One particular children's author told me that she wrote 5 books during the pandemic. And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty productive. How did you deal with the particular pandemic with your writing?
You know what? It was a good time for me to write. I just embraced it.
Mm.
I took this opportunity to spend a lot of time at the beach, which is the place where I go to create and meditate. And that's what I did. When I couldn't go to the beach, I sort of looked at all the pictures I had in my computer. Because there was a time I lived in California where we weren't allowed to even walk out of the house. So, yes, that's what I did. It was great.
So that's good. So you did take advantage of it, like most authors. I did the same myself. I guess our choices were to either curl into a little ball, right, or get
Right.
to the computer, or take your notebook, which is what I do. I take my notebook and pen, and I start writing. And so we had a choice, and it was good to hear so many authors taking advantage, or well, I shouldn't say taking advantage, but using the time wisely in that sense. That as you're getting older, are you finding that you're finding better ways to use your time more wisely when writing? I know a lot of authors get distracted. There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram. You know, so how are you dealing with that as all these social media platforms, and we're all supposed to be on it because we're all supposed to be promoting our books.
Right. It is tough. It's been tough for every writer, I'm sure. For myself, when I began writing, I didn't have many distractions. I got to sit down and just with pen and pad, like you said, and just write. But now that it's a little bit easier to use a computer, I find it's better for me because I can type faster. And I just basically bury myself in my room with my bag of bugles because I love bugles. And I snack on them and write and try to stay as focused as I can. Of course, writing a children's book isn't as there aren't as many words as writing a novel. So it's easier to go back and reread and
Mm-hmm.
try to edit your own work before you pass it on to the editor. So I'm grateful that I can do that with children's books.
You mentioned your illustrator. He's from Portugal, Luis Perez, right? And how did you find Luis?
I found this online
Mm.
in a big children's book author group that I belong to. I'd seen some of his illustrations in other books, and I felt. I mean, at first, I didn't think he would entertain myself as a new children's book author at the time, because he is well known and renowned for his art style. But he loved the story, the mystery puzzle so much that he immediately said yes. He also designs art for puzzle pieces, which at the time I didn't know for puzzles.
Yeah.
And it was a real connection from the beginning. Like I said, he really did. All the characters are mostly his design. I showed him an idea of what I thought I would like them to look like, but he really came up with the illustration ideas for the story.
He did. Okay. Now, is Easton in the book? Does he look like your grandson? Is there any correlation there?
No, zero.
Okay. I was just wondering whether am I actually looking at Easton, your grandson, or is this a different look of it, Easton? So it was based on Easton, but doesn't look like him, and doesn't want to be an astronaut for some reason.
No.
Not if he could go to Mars, huh? He said no,
Well,
no way.
he He might now that Elon Musk is, really headed that direction. So we'll see.
Okay. Now, is there a particular book? I asked this of all authors. Is there a particular book that you haven't written just yet, but you would love to? Whether it's a children's book or a novel or anything.
Well, that's an interesting question because when I first started writing I was very involved in the romance world. I was a reader engagement director for Indietel magazine for their conference called Indescribe. So I was really wrapped up in romance writers and writing, and I do have a 6-book series that I've been working on for 20 years. So will it ever publish? I don't know because it's a lot harder to write 80,000 words.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is difficult. I will say that. I think you know what it is. It's consistency that you have to carve out some time and then make sure that you spend that 90 minutes or whatever it is. It could be 30 minutes, but just stay consistent and continue to write and let the characters and the story take you in a different direction. I know it's easy to say because I struggle with it all the time. And I've written 7 novels so far. And to me, each one is a struggle. So I get the whole idea about like when you think of 80,000 words, and there's there was one I wrote that was 120,000 words.
Wow.
But that was the easiest one for me to write for some reason. I guess, and then you could have 50,000 words and that might be the toughest thing you could write. So I guess it all changes and everything. So how do people find you? Where do they find you? I assume that I found you on Amazon. I bought your book from Amazon. Do you have a website? Can people find you on Facebook or on Instagram or Twitter? I have to ask this because everybody's doing this and everything like that. So we all have to be there. We all have to promote our books. We have to make sure that we flash a big smile and say,
right.
Book,
Yes, you can actually. I am on Amazon. My books are there. You can either search for myself, Tina Marie Young, or the Mystery Puzzle series, or any of the books by their name. You can also visit my website. It's called the Mystery Puzzle Series.com. There you can get links to all the books. You can see pictures. You can read more detail about the books. Anything you want to know, you can see pictures of me. You can also get me on Facebook. The Mystery Puzzle is a group. If you want to join, I'd be happy to have more people there. It's always fun because in that group we get to talk about new releases and about books, and it's a lot of fun. It's all about the series. I also have an author page, Tina Marie Young, or the Mystery Puzzle. You can visit me on Instagram, which is also the Mystery Puzzle. So lots of ways to get a hold of me. I also do have my book, Spooky Bees, which is an online bookstore. The Stars book is there. BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com. You can just Google me on Google, and you can.
Right. I guess that's the easiest thing to do, right? Just Google the Mystery Puzzle series, Tina Marie Young. And thank you so much for joining us here on Magical Books for Kids. It was a pleasure to have you. It was fun talking about your series.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me.
And I'm Michael John Sullivan. Thank you for joining us here for Magical Books for Kids. Join us again next week for another podcast. And you can find our materials and books and merchandise at magiceverywhereinc.com. Again, thanks again to Tina Marie Young. I'm Michael John Sullivan. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.